Welcome to China Insider. Today we're going to cover two topics. First is a little update on the rampage that took place in recent days. If you haven't already seen it, I did a video just a few days ago, which I'll link here, and you can check out what happened to these Japanese kids in China. But the latest update is that the hero who saved a bus full of Japanese students in China has unfortunately passed at the age of 54. Her name is Hu Youping, and she was a teacher or a staff for this Japanese school in China. And during the attack, she basically got in between. So there was the school bus, and she got in the way of the attacker to stop the attack from coming onto the bus, which I believe had something like 40 to 50 kids on it. So the detail of the attack was that obviously this attacker was targeting the school bus, and because of her, who was able to stop the attacker, and unfortunately, because of the injuries sustained from trying to stop the person, that the attacker could not get to any of the kids on the bus, but the attacker did get to a mother and a child who was trying to get on the bus on the side. So the entire event is definitely a case riled up by anti-Japanese sentiments, but also the personal hatred this guy and the misery this guy has against society. And he wanted to vent it out in a way that nobody would, expect to happen. So this person is, who has been hailed as a hero, like an actual hero, who, right now is probably the number one topic in China for what she did to basically stop a potential tragedy, a scale in which, if it did happen, forbid that it obviously didn't happen, but if it did happen, I think it would have been an international crisis, one that would destroy the Japan-China relationship. I think one thing to really understand is that the CCP is now going to paint her as a hero too, right? To save faces. But they're the very people that started this whole anti-Japanese sentiment in the first place. So for them to now claim credibility and to take her as a hero from their perspective, it's a shame, and it's also, I think it's disgusting to do that. She is obviously a big exception to what's happening in China right now. There's a lot of nationalistic hate against Japan, and what she did is obviously super heroic. But for the CCP to now claim that, yes, it's because of us that she did this, as if she's some public hero educated by the CCP, that's simply not going to be the case. They will propagandize this now to escape the responsibility for causing this type of social rampage in the first place. I think it's very important for us to understand that her actions, they should not justify the CCP's attempts to paint the Japanese people as evil and things like that. Because I think those nationalistic propaganda will continue, and there's going to be more cases like this attack, and it's all because of the CCP. Respect for the hero, Guo. And so I'll play the message, but because it's in Japanese and there's no Chinese translation, I'll briefly talk about it. So basically, she's trying to offer condolence to and also respect to Miss Guo, and she's representing is representing the Japanese government to pay the utmost respect and for obviously, for her to rest in peace. And he bows, and then he talks about the situation of the case, which again is because this attacker tried to get onto the bus and she stopped it. Now, the Japanese flag has been lowered to half, again in respecting the passing of this woman. And I just think that this was a lesson for China, once again. Now, obviously, the CCP calls this an isolated incident, which we know is not, because in recent days, there's a high amount of anti-Japanese sentiments, videos on Chinese social media. I think it's worth remembering that not all Chinese people are bad, and there are heroes like this who are still very just and very righteous when it comes to situations like that. And but unfortunately, what this person who was met with a lot of criticisms online in China. In fact, a lot of those like pro-CCP nationalists criticized her for helping. They're like, you shouldn't have helped. You should have stepped aside. Like, how crazy is that? A bus full of students, and you want this woman to step aside. And they think that she did it wrong. And there were a lot of, these like open letters or even emails and then actual mail to the particular detention place that the attacker, the criminal, was being held at, telling them to release him because they're saying he did nothing wrong. That's really crazy to me.
中间呢被一个女汉奸阻止了，那女汉奸呢，她因为阻止受了严重的伤，她躺在医院里边了。 然后把我们那2个小日本他们安然无恙出院了。我们的这个英雄，民族英雄周某哈，周同志被刑事拘留了。我们想要表达一下我们中国人民的心声，因为我是一个中国人，我在网上看到的这起事件，我想说的是，小日本来到我们中国，他没有经过我们中国人民的同意，对不对？然后小日本曾经屠杀我们中国人的时候，在咱们中国屠杀中国人的时候，他也没有遵守什么国际公法，他也没有受到什么法律的这个制裁，他屠杀我们那么多中国人，所以说现在呢，他来到我们中国，他又没有经过我们中国人的同意，那么小日本在我们中国人的这个眼里，他本身就是个畜生。我们见到小日本就跟那杀鸡一样，就跟杀畜生一样，那是很正常的一件事情，对不对？所以说呢，我们建议该这个警察只要是我们中国人民公安，对我们周英雄哈进行保护起来。人家没有犯罪，人家就杀畜生嘛，不是很正常吗？杀鸡一样的，对不对？
就是您的意思是要公安这边放人还是什么？
能放人就放人啊，那肯定放人。我们中国人民要表彰这位英雄呢，那是英雄，那怎么能当罪犯一样去对待呢？那在我们家杀一只鸡，杀个畜生，那不是很正常的吗？畜生还没杀成，还被畜生挡着了，你说是不是？
I just thought this picture was actually pretty much represents the situation of who, and I think it's really astounding that there are still people like this in China, which I think is a very, very good thing. So these are just some of the screenshots of the particular topic. I'll try to translate them for you. So the ones that are highlighted are basically, bashing the Japanese, but other people here, like they praise her as being a hero. And then here we're talking about don't forget like the misery of China, which they're again referring to the Japanese invasion. And then more praise her. Here it says she's the real Chinese person. This one says the hero is a real Chinese. Here it says respect for the brave woman. And then here it says do not support this. Says here remember the anti-Japanese heroes and martyrs and to destroy the small Japanese imperialism. And here again is another comment saying that respect those who have died in the anti-Japanese war. And then here, which I find was pretty disgusting, here it says, when she was saving the people, she probably didn't know that the other side were Japanese, which, it doesn't really matter, right? It's not a case about national identity. I think it's a case about, are you a real good person or not? And then here it says, the key question is, what are Japanese people doing? Is the Japanese reporting on this? What happened to those who were saved? What are they doing? From what I understand, they're actually trying to raise money for her family, those that are living in China, and obviously those that are living in Japan. So apparently Chinese people are very forgetful. This was a Japanese girl during the height of COVID in China. She was doing a public donation, the spot for every person that donated to China's COVID situation. She would bow 90 degrees, which is like the highest respect. And she was just, trying to raise money for people in China because of the suffering. Every normal society would do this for those who are suffering. And so like when you read comments like this, it's like, yeah, you probably don't understand that people out there have a heart. And for our second topic, we're going to talk about how China just expelled 2 former defense ministers. So the first one is Wei Fenghe, who was the defense minister, I guess the second last defense minister. He's been purged. And then there's Li Shangfu, who is the last defense minister that basically had gone missing, right, before the current one was put in place for like a year or so. And then people were like, where the heck is the defense minister? And the CCP is like, somewhere. What's interesting is that imagine if this situation happened, right? The recent case with Lloyd Austin, he had his problems in the hospital, and people were just, everybody's like upset, like saying you should resign because, you need to be able to carry out the duty of the top defense chief of the country. And yet in China, obviously, the Chinese defense minister title is more like, it doesn't really have real power. It's like it's just an in name only, right? But still, it's like it's really strange when you have 2 defense ministers go missing pretty much around the same time, and then they're saying like nothing happened. So what the CCP did was interesting because after months of speculating, his name is Wei Fenghe, they're like, oh yeah, he's okay because they sent a flower wreath to the funeral to one a funeral and his name was on it. So they're like, yeah, he's okay just because he did that. You know, his name appeared publicly, he's okay. It turns out he's not okay. So why are we, why do we have to care about this case? Well, for one, both of them, because of issues like corruption related to basically using their power to gain advantage, like promotions, etc., are both going to get purged from the party, facing potential jail time. And both of them are loyalists to Xi Jinping, or I should say, the close confidants of Xi Jinping that Xi personally promoted through the ranks to become defense minister. And however, at the same time, it also tells us that the chaos within the Chinese military, those that Xi Jinping trusted, are found to have big corruption issues, which is something that you cannot stand, right? Even as Xi Jinping, because his whole idea is that he has to be anti-corruption as a way of power struggle. So if his own people are also, corrupt, that's just awkward, right? So he can't. There's no way he can stop this from happening, right? Them getting purged. But there's also other issues, and I believe much bigger than just the corruption issue, which is the issue of loyalty. And here it talks about this. Wei lost his faith and loyalty. What does that mean exactly when you lose loyalty? Well, for one, you might have been involved in a scheme conspiring to remove Xi Jinping. That could be seen as losing your loyalty and faith, a potential coup. Or in other cases, it was simply the fact that those people that Xi Jinping thought he trusted didn't actually, or they weren't loyal to him at all. They were just trying to pretend to be loyal to them so that they can gain personal power. In those cases, when Xi Jinping finds out, he's obviously not going to let them go on for longer, right? But the key to this is actually the fact that you have two defense ministers who, by the way, if you don't know this, they all came from a branch of the Chinese military, the PLA, called Strategic Support Force, or the Equipment Procurement Force. So what the Equipment Procurement Force does is basically it gets all the weapons and all the systems that they buy, right? So they have access to a lot of like weapons dealers, arms dealers. It's very easy for them to get money that way. So here's the relationship. This guy is Li Shangfu. He was the last defense minister to go missing. He was a protege of this guy who is the defense minister before him to go missing. They all happen to have worked in the Equipment Procurement Force. And all of them, I guess you would call them like proteges of this guy, who is the vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, which basically is like the number 2 of military when it comes to the CCP and the PLA. And he might be implicated in this next. He is like Xi Jinping's left-hand man when it comes to the military. But because, the people under this guy, right, Zhang Youxia, had problems, which are these two, the Li Shangfu and Wei Fenghe, then that means this guy could potentially be next. Now, if this does happen, it's a huge issue because this guy is literally like the number 2 guy in the military. And if he gets purged, it just shows you that the entire military system within the CCP is corrupt, obviously, but they're likely just not that loyal to Xi Jinping, or that Xi Jinping is just so Stalinized that he doesn't care. Any sign of loyalty issue, he's going to purge them. So you might be wondering, what happens to this guy then, Qin Gang, the former foreign minister who had gone missing? Still to this day, 1-year anniversary, he has not been seen in public. My guess is that he's probably, so I really don't think he can appear anymore. One of the biggest story that I covered before was from Political Europe. And notice how this story, if you actually look at it, there is no one particular author. They used the credibility of Political Europe to write this article. So whatever they wrote in here, I think we should take it with very much of credibility in terms of the information that they revealed. Potentially with the defense ministers and the generals who commanded China's rocket force, which also oversees China's nuclear program, they were involved in something which we have no idea. Is that a coup? Is there some sort of, massive corruption scandal? We have no idea. But obviously, it's big enough that it's still ongoing 1 year after that the investigation has not concluded. More people are still falling from grace, and more people are getting purged. And I think we're just at the beginning stage of it. Because again, like I said, this is running through the entire chain of the military system. It's not just an isolated case. And the scale in which how many people were being involved in this is massive.